Well, hello, folks. I am just finished recording a video all about terrain, and I've changed my mind about how to do it. So I'm going to release a different video. I made a lovely sort of fancy terrain. We made the bridges, and they fall when you touch them. They stop being static, and all sorts of good stuff. And it works great. But the codes, that's not what I would say would be great code. I think it's fine if you just want to make a platformer, but we're not just making a platformer, we're learning about object-oriented design. So I'm going to be changing things up, but I just wanted to share with you a little bit about what I did before and why I'm going to change it. So in the video that I'm not going to release, I made an FBridge class and it extended FBox. The idea was that each different terrain, fancy terrain like the bridge, the lava, your animated blocks, that kind of stuff, they would all extend FBox, and that would be, it'd be a reasonable thing, just like our FPlayer did. But there's a problem. There's a problem with that, and that is we want them to act, and FBoxes don't act. And so there's a long story about how that works, but we ended up getting code that looked like this. So in addition to telling these things to act, it's fine when we tell the player to act because player is an FPlayer, but when we made it a list of terrains, we had to make it a list of FBoxes because we're gonna have a list of bridges so we have a list that will contain bridges and lava and other things. I didn't want to make like 10 different lists for 10 different terrain types, right? So we end up having to pull it out as an FBox, whatever our terrain is when we're animating it. And then this is how we have to call the act function. It's really gross. I would rather be like b.act, but I can't do that. You'll see it says act does not exist, even though I coded it in. Here's their act, because this is of type FBox. So we are going to change this, and I'm going to show you a different and a better way to make it happen. So if we have a couple extra steps that we're doing, and it seems like, why are we doing that? Well, it's probably because we're trying to avoid that outcome and make it look like this instead, or something closer to this. All right, so I'm going to go clean this up, and we'll come back and we'll take a look at it. All right, folks, so now that we are making more classes that extend FBox, I think it's time to create a super class for all of our new F classes, our F players, our F bridges, our F lavas, all the things that are going to need classes. Let's make a layer where we can build in the commonalities. So for example, in FPlayer, I have a nice function. This check for collisions function is pretty sweet, and I would like to be able to use it in other things, but I don't want to copy and paste it to all my other classes. What a pain. Instead, I would like to make a super class to FPlayer that's a subclass of FBox, like something in between here that would store all of those tools. So I'm going to make a new tab. I'm going to call it F. I don't know what to call it. It's like it's all the kind of game objects. So I'll call it FGameObject. I don't know about the F necessarily needs to be there, but okay, sure. So FGameObject is going to be a class, and it's going to extend FBox. Extends with an S, sorry. And I don't know exactly, let's see, I guess I'm going to give it a constructor. So, and it's going to call the superclass constructor the FBox constructor. It's going to be kind of similar to this, right? I'm going to do the grid size. And that's probably going to be true for all of my objects, whether they're an FPlayer or a terrain tile. Like they're all going to be kind of similar, so that's good. And can I think of anything else that needs to go in here? No, I think I'll do these things sort of on the things that they extend. So I'll just leave it like that. Okay, great. And now what I'd like to do is bring over our check for collisions. I'm going to take that and cut it out of FPlayer. I'm going to bring it over to my FGameObject. And I'm going to make it a little bit more generic. So instead of checking for collisions with a specific name, what I can do is I can check for collisions with a string. N, I guess. And then I can look for any particular kind of string. So that'll be a handy little tool that all of my things will get. That way I can look, see if I'm touching the player, or if I'm touching the, I don't know, the spike, all those kind of different things. I can just send it a string to see if I'm touching one of those things. I might make, while I'm at it, I might make another copy of it that would take a different parameter, that would take a parameter for a body. But I'll leave that for now. I think the name will be enough for now. So let's go on and see. I guess I would also like to make an act function. Void act. And act, I'm just going to leave blank, actually. Act will be a function for just overriding purposes. But this way, all game objects will have an act function, and that will be easy then to call from a loop. Okay, so here's my sort of game object foundation. It'll include a constructor that calls the fbox constructor. It will include a collisions function for checking for collisions. And I guess actually, you know what? I think one other thing I want to do is I want to make it so that instead of set position, like this is kind of specific to the player, right? Let's do one other thing. Let's also say, make this a Boolean function. Let's make it Boolean, and let's make it return true. And at the end of the loop, return false. So basically, it will just say true or false. Am I touching a thing with this name? And then I can call it from other contexts. So maybe I'll turn this into is touching, because then that makes a little bit more sense. If is touching, spike or something like that. So this will kind of be a Boolean function. So now we'll go and update our F player. So F player no longer checks for collisions. So we'll make that change. And we'll also notice that I've added in a set name property for the F player. So you'll want to add that in as well. So they'll just add that set name. But what we'll do is we'll call, we'll also extend FGameObject. And then our super is going to be calling FGameObject superclass, so it doesn't take any parameters. So we'll get rid of that. So now what we can do is we can inherit the is touching function, and then we will say if is touching spike, then do something. I think what I was doing, like this will just be where I put in my lives. It goes down by 1, but I'll just put in a set position 0, 0 for now, and like you're most welcome to improve upon that. Okay. So I'm missing a parenthesis. Okay. So let's see. Let's just confirm I haven't broken anything. Oh, I did break something. I'll get rid of that. Sorry. Please ignore. That's something altogether different. Okay, so our player still seems to be working, and if I touch a spike, I don't teleport. And let's see why that is. If is touching spike. Oh, I put a capital S. That's why. Okay, there we go. Let's try again. Touching spike, boop, yeah, it works. Okay, so everything's working. And so essentially, I'll just kind of show you again what we got here. So we got our FGameObject. It's really not too much. It extends fbox. Its constructor is super basic. I have converted the check for collisions into a more general function, is touching. That'll just check to see if the current object is touching a particular named object, F body of some kind. And then it will return true or false. Okay, so then in my F player, I've now made the change where the super class is now FGameObject. So my super call doesn't need any parameters. I set the name to player, and I have changed my act function. It is if is touching the spike, set position to 0. And nothing else has changed from handle input. And of course, I deleted or copied and pasted over check for collisions, and I got rid of it here. Okay, so there we go. So this seems like a lot of work for nothing, but nothing really has changed in terms of the playability of the game. However, we are now set up to do some really good stuff with terrain and avoid the problem I was talking about. So now let's go and make a new terrain object. So I'm going to make a terrain object. All right, so now we're going to go make that collapsing bridge. So I'll make a new tab and call it FBridge. And now this is where we're going to talk about the fancy terrain. The fancy terrain really needs to have a class attached to it because they're going to be doing behaviors that need programming. And where are we going to put that code? We need to put it somewhere. So a class is a good place to do it. And then, they'll have like an act function and we can loop through all the terrains and tell them to act. So I'll make a class called FBridge, and this FBridge is going to be that collapsing bridge we saw at the beginning of the video. It'll be checking to see if it touches a player, and if it does, it'll fall down. So it'll extend the FGameObject, and that's a really nice little feature that we spent a lot of time in the last few minutes building. So let's put it to good use. So what I'll do now is I will make a constructor. So FBridge is the name of the constructor. And I don't think it really needs any parameters. It'll just call its superclass's constructor, which is FGameObject, and that'll construct a grid size by grid size FBox. And then I'm probably going to do similar things to what FPlayer did. I'll probably set position. This will be a little bit hard though, because where am I going to put its position? So actually, I might change something up there. So for a FBridge, I think I will have to have parameters. It'll have to be told from that loop where to go. So I'll say float x and float y, and we will set it to whatever position we're told to go to. We'll set the name to bridge. It doesn't have to be not rotating, that's fine. Its fill color is probably not important, but we can attach image. And I've loaded this image already. I called mine bridge, so you'll have to load that from the tile set. Let's see. Oh, and set static true. Because when the game starts, they shouldn't fall down. They should wait till they touch a player to fall down. Okay, so that's a reasonable start for our constructor. We might come back and make some additional changes. Let's see. Next thing I probably would like to do is make an act function to tell them to fall. And this is where we can make good use of our isTouching function that we built. So isTouching, this is it here. It's basically just looping through all the contacts, the list of events that are happening to a particular body. So in our act function, we can do this. I can say if isTouching player. What do? Well, we will set static to false. And I wonder if we should set sensor to true so that it falls through the map, so we can hit the what do they call the spikes that are below on the bridge. I'm not 100% sure this will work, so I'll just comment this out and come back to it, see if it works later. Okay, so there we go. So this is a reasonable implementation of a bridge. It is, and it's really convenient that I don't have to copy and paste this isTouching. And all my future terrain can just kind of make use of this function almost like it's built in, because it is built in, because they extended GameObject. Okay, so let's actually go and make it work, because right now, there's not going to be any bridges in our game. So we've made the class, but what are we missing? We're missing the whole terrain loading. I got to load in these bridges. And then I'll have to, tell them to act. So I've already done the work to, bring in an image. So, I've made a new, somewhere down here. There it is. I got a new bridge image. And I have loaded it, so that's good. And I've chosen a color. It's going to be pink. And so when I find a pink pixel, I'll put in a bridge. So I'll make a new FBridge object. I'll just call it BR equals new FBridge. And I have to send it the X and Y coordinates. So that's going to be, for me, Let's see. Basically, what I send other things, right? I'm going to send it the x times grid size, y times grid size. So I'll just put that information here. That's normally where I set the position. FBridge doesn't seem to like that too much, hey? Local BR, oh, it's not used. Yeah, but that's okay. We don't care if it's used. We could say world.add.br just to put it to use. Oh, okay, there you go. But also, we're gonna, if we just do that, we'll see the bridge. If I run this, you'll see the bridge, and it looks great, but it won't fall. Like if I land on it, it's not gonna fall. And the reason why is even though we programmed all this, code, it's not that much code, I guess, but even though we programmed this in, there's nowhere to call the act function from. And we're going to have many bridge objects, and of course, we'd also like to support other fancy terrain types, the lava and all those other things. So what we'll need to do is make a list of all of our fancy terrains so we can go and tell them to act. We didn't have to do this for the player, because the player has a specific name, and that's great. We can just tell the player to act, but we don't want to record all of our bridges and our lavas in individual variables. That would be too onerous. So what we'll do instead is we will make a list of array list of our FGameObjects called terrain. And so this will include F bridges and F lavas and all the other kind of fun things that we'd like to add in. So let's go and instantiate that list. So I guess I'll do that. I'll just do it here. So terrain equals new FGameObject. Oh, I forgot array list. There we go. So now it's ready to use. And what we can do is we can add things to the list that are the fancy terrains. So, all these regular terrains we don't need to add, but a fancy terrain that has an act function that's going to do something, we'll say terrain.add that. We'll add all the bridges. And this still isn't enough. We've added them to a list, but the purpose of that was so that we could go and process them all. So we have to add in that loop to process them. So, I could put it in the draw function, but it might be nice to make a separate function to call. We got draw world, so we could have act world, like make the world do all of its things. So like we have void draw, we'll have void act world. That grammatically doesn't quite make sense, so I might question that. I'll put the player.act in here as well, and then we'll make a little loop that will go through all of the terrain objects, the bridges and things, and we'll tell them to act. So that's not going to be too onerous, I don't think. We'll just make a for loop for int I equals 0. Well, I is less than terrain dot size I plus plus. So that'll take us from the first terrain item to the last terrain item. And if there's no terrains for whatever reason, then it won't do anything. And we'll just grab one. We'll say FGameObject. I'll just call it obj object equals terrain.get I, and then I will say obj.act. I didn't have this is just a generic term for any particular, maybe I'll call it terrain. It's a little bit less annoying. So we'll get each individual terrain piece, and then we'll tell it to act. And so this could be a bridge, it could be a, whatever it is. Get terrain.get. Yeah, that's kind of weird. Did I spell something wrong here? Get does not exist. Yeah, that's kind of weird. Oh, I guess I can't call that terrain because that's terrain. So I'll just call it T because that's a kind of pain in the butt there. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the terrain object will be called T, and then that won't overlap with the list name. All right, whew. Okay, so this loop basically will tell all the terrains to act. So if we go and walk over here, We can see now that our bridge is set to fall, and if I jump on it, indeed it falls. So now we can have our fancier terrain. I think I'll just see what happens if I put the set sensor to true to see if it'll fall away. And yeah, now it actually like falls into the world and goes away. So I might actually hit the spikes. So I think that's a good call to put in. All right, there you go, folks. So this was a pretty long video, and I hope that made sense. Basically, the FGameObject was a big idea. It's a good foundation for all of our classes, including our FPlayer and all of our new terrains. And once we've added that in, they'll act nicely, and we have a nice function for checking to see if we're interacting with any other particular things, like spikes, like players, you name it, as made more generic. So good luck with putting that together. We have a couple of other fancy terrains to add in, like animated bricks and other interesting, dangerous type things like that. So we'll come back with another video soon. Thank you.